Well, welcome to YouTube for Podcast Radio. I'm Graham Mack, and I'm with Nick Randell from SNS Online. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm really well. I am so honoured to be here. It's very exciting to be interviewed by somebody because usually I'm the one who's doing
Well,
all
I
the
tell you
questions.
what's just happened. I've just unplugged
Oh
my
yeah.
headphone. Let me just plug that back in. You go on. You were saying nice things about me. You could always repeat it.
Yeah, I think I was. Was I? Yeah, I was just saying that I'm usually the one doing all the. I'm a very nosy person, really, very inquisitive. So for you to start sort of, asking me stuff, I mean, like far away, favorite color, whatever, I am up for it. Just to say, dear readers who are watching this, and any fans of the pair of us, and that must at least add five people to your amount of people who watch your stuff. We've had a few technical problems before we got here. I bought this fantastic microphone. I bought this amazing microphone from Amazon, and it totally works and everything. But when you plug it in, we've just realised that with Bluetooth and stuff, it's not happening. So I need to speak to my boffins at the BBC and tell me what I'm doing wrong. But they'll
But
be amused
you
at that.
sound pretty good. I think
It's
anyone
all
who's watching
right.
and listening to this, well, yeah, they'll be enjoying it. It sounds good, Nick.
Joe,
Yeah,
Joe Public never clock a thing, darling. So we're fine.
exactly.
So anyway, fire away.
Well, where are you right now?
I am in my home in Beckton, East London, and I've got a couple of days off, and then I'm back to work, my day job at the BBC. Well, actually, all over Christmas. So people need to. Oh, I need people to feel very sorry for me, but no, it's fine, it's fine.
And what do
I
you do
will
at
be
the
there.
British
Yeah,
Broadcasting Castration?
I do the sound, I like broadcast sound, so studio management and for the World Service Radio. Done a bit of
Right,
TV as well for Persian TV. So a lot of it is language sections,
right.
but we're doing some English stuff as well now. So News Hour and all that carry on, all the strokey beard stuff.
I know a bloke at World Service. His name's Jimmy Luff. He probably might call himself James Luff these days. You know
You,
him?
Jimmy, bless him. I don't know if he's watching at the moment, but hello, Jimmy. If you are watching, yes, I know Jimmy very well. He now works for Persian and Arabic TV, and I think some domestic stuff as well. He's doing very well. And there's a friend of mine, Dom, who I must shout out. Soho Bites, a fantastic podcast all about films in Soho and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I've heard
And
it on podcast
he
radio.
is
It's great. Yeah.
yeah, it is cracking. So I'm giving you a plug, Dom, and he should be watching actually at the moment. So hello. So, there you
Well, say hi to Jimmy for me. Jimmy,
go. I certainly will.
I first met him when he was, I think he was only a teenager. He was he was an intern. He wasn't even being paid when I was running 2CR FM in
He's
Dorset.
still not being paid. He's still not being paid. We,
Well,
we
got
can't get rid of him.
he got the unfortunate name down there that stuck. Thankfully, only down there, I think, of Jimmy Bollocks. Um,
I'm
and
glad you told me that.
that was because he used to help out on the breakfast show, and the show started at 6, and between 5 and 6 we ran best bits from the day before. And he was saying to me, "Is there anything I can do?" I said, "Tell you what, you can cut up the best bits for, the next day's 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. slot, and do that." Well, little did he know. Well, he made a programming decision on his own that he was not only going to play the clips, he was going to actually introduce them on the air. Now, it was all voice tracked, it wasn't live. And so
Um,
I get in about 5 a.m. ready to go on the air at 6, and I'm listening to the output. And I hear Jimmy introducing the clips, and I think, oh, bloody hell, all right, we'll have to have a word with him about that. And the next minute the link goes, "Oh, this is 2CRFM," and oh, bollocks,
oh, I love it.
on the air. And so I called him into the office and I said, "Jimmy, you got a minute?" Because he hadn't heard it. And he came in and I said, don't know if you realise, but we have a logger here that logs everything we do in case Ofcom, in case there's a complaint, and we've got record of it for Ofcom. I said, this one on the air about 20 minutes ago, whenever it was, and played it to him. And literally the colour drained from his face. And he said, "What's going to happen?" I said, "Well, in severe cases, we could lose our licence. We'll just have to see if anyone complains." Yeah. So,
Jimmy always reminds me of somebody who's just been caught out on a scrumping spree in Farmer
what he looked
Giles's
like.
garden. He's got that
Yeah,
sort of little cheeky expression as if he's just done something wrong, and he probably
yeah.
has as well. So
But never mind him, Nick. Where are you from?
I am well. I was born in Germany because my dad was in the RAF, and then we moved to
Really? So you,
England.
you were a military
Very
brat?
Yeah, but yeah. One of many. There's quite a few of us around. So just to
Yeah,
say, well,
yeah.
before we start, because my mouth is very
Okay,
dry.
okay.
It is Christmas after all,
It is.
and I want
Yes,
to
yeah.
toast your fabulous show, sir, and
Okay.
for inviting me on it. So I'm
You're right.
terribly impressed with that. So I thought we could share a glass together. So I'm going to sort of
Yes.
open this. You can sort of talk as I open this.
Well,
It
as you
shouldn't
open it,
take long.
I probably should
Props,
let you know
props.
that I haven't had an alcoholic drink since 1998. So,
Oh.
to be honest with you, I'd rather have a cup of tea, but I don't know if through the through the magic of connecting up, whether it could turn into a cup of tea somehow. I don't know.
Well, hopefully it might do that. So let's see how we do.
Okay.
I mean,
Right.
usually these days, I don't. My partner doesn't drink hardly at all, and I don't tend to much. I mean, I prefer a nice hot cup of tea myself. The only problem with that is it doesn't half make your willy sore. So anyway, oh, there we
Oh,
go.
wow.
Oh, that wasn't supposed to happen at all.
Right. Okay.
Technical.
I'm so
Props.
glad that that is happening at your place and not mine. But
I got the
you
glasses. I
have
got the
brought two
glasses.
glasses. Okay, well,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
could be a first. First
Well,
first alcohol since 1998. What could possibly go wrong? Yes. So
Oh, for the 10th anniversary of my show Scratch and Sniff, SNS Online. I'll explain the title properly in a minute.
yeah,
I had a debate with previous guests. We got four previous guests all around the round table. I got lots of prosecco, and it was a Magnum bottle.
right,
The two women who were there didn't drink at all. So the
right,
three guys, including myself, I mean,
yeah,
by the end, the three guys were being very raucous. But
right. I
I
see.
remember seeing about 10 of everybody by the end of the evening, but we had fun. Um, anyway, so right.
Okay,
Happy
okay,
Christmas and happy
okay,
Graham.
okay.
And
All
hang on,
right.
how am I
See.
doing? So I'm going to pass it to you now. Let's see if this is going to
Okay,
work.
okay. Let's see. And look at that! It
Oh
is
my
a cup
God!
of tea. Oh,
It's
it's
a
just perfect. Yeah. Oh,
it's a
yeah.
Christmas miracle, sir. So cheers to your good health.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yay! Oh, this is much better.
Right. So where were we? So
Oh
you
my
you
God.
you're born in Germany and you grew up as a military brat. So I'm guessing you moved around a lot.
Yeah, Yorkshire, various places in Yorkshire, then London,
Yeah.
then Norfolk, and that was after my dad had left because they moved to a post office in a village, and they ran the post office for 10 years post RAF career. My mum was a writer, novelist, so they both basically could sort of do something together post
Yeah.
their respective careers. And then they retired to Cyprus, and then they came back to England. So we're quite a travel family, actually. I have a brother in India who's in the Hare Krishna movement,
Right.
and yeah, so I think which is
Yeah.
cool in Norfolk, who's a chiropodist, and he has a whole trainer karate practice. So if you want your feet doing, go to Randall's Foot Care, everybody. Randall's Foot Care. That's £5 you owe me, Steve.
Okay.
So yes, and my sister lives in Norwich, and she's brilliant and does loads of it. She's a teacher, and she plays about 20,000 musical instruments and child mining and all sorts of stuff. So there we go, covered them all.
And were you into recording audio and stuff when you were a kid?
Yeah, I was, because I had another sister who unfortunately died. Actually, 1975 now, so it's quite a long time ago. But she was in broadcast at the time.
Wait a second, Nick.
Like, which meant it was very cheap flight.
You've gone a little bit ship to shore there. You had a sister who did you say there was broadcasting in there? Oh, hello. Wow. Where's he gone? He's disappeared. Let's see if I can work out what's going on here and see if we can get him back. So there he is. And
Hey!
so you were saying your sister. I think I heard the word broadcaster. It could have been war war. I'm not quite sure. And
Okay. Are you getting me now?
I'm getting you now.
Okay, brilliant. So, yes, to cut a short story even shorter, basically, my sister was working in Hong Kong as a teacher,
Right.
But I happened to be like, well, 7 or 8 years old at the time. I was the right age for her class. So we went to Hong Kong for a month on a cheap flight from the RAF. We were there for a whole month, and I stayed in her class for all that time during the week, obviously. But she was also a broadcaster. She presented this program called Playtime, which went out on Radio Hong Kong, and it was my first ever taste of radio. So I was in a proper radio studio with spools of tape, and I had to read a couple of poems out about one about a lion and one about something else, a dog or something like that. And I was known as Tricky Nicky
Right.
because I used to do magic tricks and they always went wrong, and I used
On
to
the
try
radio?
yeah, but they were great on the radio, mate. I tell you, they were fantastic. Um, Silent radio is the best one. But no, I sort of would get these boxes of magic tricks for Christmas, and then I wouldn't really bother to learn them properly. I never really had that staying power. But I would try to do a trick for my parents, and then it would all go wrong, and I'd be in tears, and I'd have to go to bed early. But I was known as Tricky Nicky. This is where it came from. So there you go, Tricky Nicky rules the airwaves.
So it was performance and radio from very early on. So how did you get a
Yeah.
gig in radio then? How did that start?
Oh God, that's a really so long ago now. I think that, well, okay. So I now have to mention my good friend Julian Clover, who you might know from he writes for a lot of trade journals for broadcasting, and is in the Norfolk area, Cambridge 105 FM. He's one of the breakfast presenters for that. Uh, anyway, about the age of 12, he was doing his own little radio shows, pirate radio. So he would like go to Thetford Forest and string up some wires and set off people's, pacemakers in hospitals and stuff like that. And so I joined him. So I went over to his house, and we would record these silly tapes with music and try to, sound as professional as possible. And they would go out. They would go out from Liverpool, actually. Somebody in Liverpool played them out. I can't remember what the station was called now. One was called Starboard Sound. This was another one. Anyway, so we had lots of fun with
But
that.
it was a
And I think
pirate.
that's a bit. Yeah. Unofficial, shall we say?
It wasn't community radio. It was pirate radio.
Yeah, it was pirate radio.
Right.
War.
So you started out as a rebel to start with then.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I was absolute rebel without a clue. And then my friend, when we were all grown up and everything, Julian was then doing a show at the YMCA, Russell Street, which is a gym and hotel and all that. And so I got to do a show there as well. So and that was, I mean, I don't know if anybody really bothered to listen to it, but we were broadcasting to people in the gym and stuff like that. But
Your audio
yeah, I know we
came in
never
and
got
out a
much
little. Your audio went in and out of there,
feedback.
Nick. Did you say that was a hospital radio station?
Okay. No, it was a community station at Great Russell Street. It was a hotel. It's a hotel and a gym.
Okay.
And it's called
Oh, so it was a closed circuit
YMCA
kind of a
Radio or
thing.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just put out to the locals in the gym and all the rest of it. But that I got a lot of experience from that. Then there's a guy there who used to be a presenter on Classic FM, Andre Leon. Now he was the program controller for this station, and I was selling advertising at the Independent, and great paper, but it's a tough job doing selling. It wasn't really my thing at all. And I said to him one night, I'm so fed up with this. I just need a break. And Andre said to me, well, they're actually looking for people at Classic. They're doing a new station called Classic. It was like jazz in the classic style. And Sarah Ward, who you might know that name from Capital for Me and all the rest of it, she was presenting the show. So I got to be broadcast sound for that, just holidays, that sort of thing, which then led me to get a job at the BBC because somebody was moonlighting, I won't mention who, from the BBC. And he told me about the BBC jobs and they were looking for people. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is the thing. If you really commit to something and you're so enthusiastic and you just keep going, then it's not so much you get lucky. You put yourself in a position where something might come to you, but you still have to, I mean, it took a lot of years to get to that point.
Yeah. And and you just have to be in the environment. You have to talk to people, and you just have to keep going and don't let anything stop you, don't you? You just it's just one of those things. It's like anything that is anything in show business or even radio, which is the outskirts of show business. It's the same rules. Yeah.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
So,
Um,
but
so yeah,
didn't you end up with a thing with there's an Irish connection though, isn't there, to SNS Online? What's that?
yes, okay. So essentially, there's a friend at work called Dave Timpson who was doing my job, but he then left with his wife Lindsay, who he met at BBC, and they fell in love and blah blah blah. Went to Ireland, and then he became the digital overall controller of the digital outlet of RTE. So they were creating 8 brand new stations for the DAB market, and one
And
of them was
that's
called
the RTE. If anyone doesn't know, it's the equivalent, the Irish equivalent of the BBC. It's the state broadcaster.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's essentially the same sort of vibe, but in Ireland. So,
yeah.
I they Dave basically he wanted somebody who could DJ, and I used to DJ in the BBC club on Friday nights and have lots of free beer and get very drunk. Wanted somebody who could like drive a show and stuff like that, present. And he also he needed a gay representation at LGBTQ because it was a gay night basically. Wednesdays was gay Wednesdays,
Right.
and gay Wednesday, and it was because it was a dance music station. I think the assumption there, possibly a little bit lazily, and I don't think nowadays it would be done the same, but
No.
all the gays love the dance music. So
Right.
and I don't get me wrong. I mean, I found out an awful lot about dance music, and there's some banging tunes out there. It's got to be said. And I got to interview people from the dance music scene and all that stuff. And it was like a magazine show. It was supposed to be lots of fun and a bit silly and bonkers. So I called it Scratch and Sniff because I just thought that was the slightly bonkers sort of title.
Yeah.
But it sort of evolved something a bit different, and I wanted to do long form interviews with guests. Now, the first one I got was this guy called Lee Thomas, who used to be in a band called Two Thirds in the 90s. So that was a sort of a dance music-y type of thing. So I did a whole hour just with him and lots of clips of the music and all the rest of it. And I thought I want to do more of those type of shows. And then I started to stretch the remit a bit. And I had a script writer on. It was nothing to do with the LGBTQ thing particularly. It was just an interesting interview. One was about John Lennon because she was a writer called Gail Renard, who was a friend of John Lennon in the 60s. And so we did one show about John Lennon and one general show about her career. And it really was nothing. I was really moving away from what I was supposed to be doing. But they didn't complain. I mean, I wasn't actually being paid for any of these gigs, actually, even though it was RTE. RTE doesn't have any money. They invented the recession, so, this is how it goes. But I think it reached the point where I thought, you know what, I would like to create something springing from this, but just exactly how I want to do it.
Yeah.
And so we sort of mutually decided after 4 years that I would go. Which was fine. And then it took me about a year to sort of work out exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to hang on to the name and sort of the identity that, it's grassroots, but I thought I'd homogenize it to SNS because if you're doing like a strokey beard interview about mental health or women's rights in Afghanistan or anything like that, it's just like, you just want to make it a little bit more calmer. So I do occasionally have this awkward conversation with people when I'm trying to get an interview, and I say, it's always SNS. So what does SNS stand for? And
You'll have to come up with a different acronym to tell them.
No.
Yeah,
I mean,
something that sounds very highbrow on Radio 4.
Yeah. You see, I was thinking that I'm sort of scratching beneath the surface and having a good sniff of the guests. I thought that might work.
Yeah.
I don't know, but anyway, there you go. But it might.
And RTE didn't have a problem with you using the name because you can get into. I know presenters who have left stations and gone to other stations, and they may have features, and the other stations have the station that they started the feature on won't let them take the feature, and they've had to change the name. They've done the feature, but they've just changed the name of it. But things like that, people just like getting in the way, I think. Yeah.
It was just a quite sweet homespun sort of vibe from the beginning. As I said, I wasn't paid for any of it. I came up with all the ideas. They were just grateful for the content because they had an awful lot of content to fill over these 8 stations.
Yeah.
So I just don't think it was an issue at all. I mean, I could have changed the name when I started, but had my name in it somehow. But I just thought I just liked it. So, but so far they haven't come back to me with a writ or something.
And you celebrated quite an anniversary because the podcast itself been going a long, long time now, hasn't it, Nick?
Oh my God, it's been going thousands. Well, no, it hasn't been going thousands. So I think we're on our eighth. We've just finished. I always say we to imply there's a huge team of people working on
Why
it.
not?
It's just
Yeah.
me. Well,
Yeah.
because it just sounds a bit better, doesn't it? So we
Yeah.
have just finished the Royal We. We've just finished a series 8. So that's 8 years plus 4 years of the other one. So whatever that is, a 13. So yeah. So it's been going a tidy while.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And did you find when you switched from doing what was a broadcast show to a podcast show that made things easier in any way? Because you don't have the main difference I think between broadcasting and podcasting is that broadcasting will have a format of some kind, and there are tighter
Yeah.
formats than others. But podcasting is just so open and free, and if you want to talk to a guest for a little bit longer and not go to traffic and travel right now, you can do that. And I say this as someone who used to do a talk show and once had a cabinet minister on an ISDN line and was told to wind the interview up quickly so we could go to traffic and travel. And we went to traffic and travel and nothing was going on. And I think sometimes radio suffers because of that, because you can't just go in a direction or milk something. You have to keep stopping down for these particular junctions, specifically commercial radio with commercials and news. Yeah.
But what I would say is I quite like the fact that I had that discipline of having to make each episode like 59 minutes, 28 seconds, or all that sort of thing. And
yeah,
there was a structure to it. Because I think when you listen to, I mean, I'm very old school, but when I listen to a radio show, I like it to be reasonably tight in content and the way it's structured. It's probably my BBC training after years and years.
Yeah.
So for me, it didn't change completely. It didn't change that much. I still wanted it to have a certain structure to it, but I could be freer to have like an hour and a half if I wanted to, or split up into 2 parts, and there was no deadline, and it had to come out at a certain time. Although I did give myself deadlines just to make it feel a bit more like broadcasting, because I thought it was good to sort of.
And also, it forces you to get things done.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you got like an album releasing on a certain day or a TV program, and you've done a feature about that, it needs to go out on that day for it to really work. So I had a lot of those sort of deadlines. So it just became a different sort of thing. And just on a general note about podcasts, I mean, there are some incredible podcasts out there. We are almost drowning in this content. I mean, a lot of it is just fantastic. But I do struggle a little bit when occasionally I put on something and they just take forever to get around to giving us some content. So it'll be Jim and Tony, and they'll be on one little tinny mic in their bedroom, and Gary can't be there because he's got a bad foot, and they'll bang on about their Patreon thing and this and advertising for the first 10 minutes, and you just think, well, I'm going to switch off now, and I haven't even heard anything.
Yeah.
So I mean, so what I do is I have like literally as soon as you're into the show, there's a tight sort of menu with clips, a music bed, straight into the guests and blah 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 blah. I mean, I say possibly one of the many issues with my show might be that I'm not very good at whittling things down. I mean, if I've got like a great guest, I don't really want to ditch anything. I mean, occasionally I'll cut the odd thing out, but I just think, oh, I want to put it all in. So they do. Some of them can be a little bit longer than others, but that's the pause button, isn't it?
But it does sound great, and you do, as you say, you hit the ground running,
That's
and
my
that
dream.
is something I noticed is like, yeah, you're right. So many podcasts, you just think to yourself, get on with it. And actually, there are some of the really big ones that make it into top 10 on the Pod 20, and you listen to them and you think, wow. It's taken 15 minutes for you to get to the guest or whatever.
I know.
And it could have taken like 3, and we could, there was some good content in the preamble, but there wasn't, there wasn't 15 minutes worth. Yeah. And I do like that about your podcast. It really, I think it's about having some respect for the listener's time, because
Well, I mean, that's the
that's
thing.
what they're giving you, is
But
they're giving you their most
yeah,
valuable resource. You owe it to them to not waste it.
I know, and I'm I'm always grateful when anybody tunes in and or comments or anything like that, because I mean that's what it's all about. You create these things to be consumed and enjoyed. You hope at the end of the day. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
you're right about there being
mm,
so many podcasts out there. I mean, that's one of the great things about podcast radio is you can turn it on and you really, I mean, there's a schedule, but you something might catch you out that you wouldn't have found otherwise, and you go, I
no,
must remember that podcast. Like the Soho one, for instance, is one I didn't
yeah,
know anything about, and I caught it on podcast radio.
absolutely,
It's a great podcast about a really special
mm,
part of London, and
yeah.
it's no SNS Online, but it's a good podcast. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
It's
I mean, I would say its value is equal to it because
you
that's
would
what it
say
offers. But
equal,
no,
okay, yeah.
no, I mean it's very well, it's very well made and mixed and all the rest of it. So I just tend to warm to those type of podcasts. I do. I mean, the thing is, my show is quite traditional, and it's almost like a radio show you would expect to hear,
Yeah.
rather than, I mean, they have things like the Grief Cast now, where a stand-up comedian talks about some loss in his life. I mean, that's a really clever spin on an idea to interview somebody. Or Alan Carr, I think he interviews people about their holidays or for their favorite restaurants when you're in a really happy mood and you remember happy. So that's brilliant. But I mean, my one is far more like I guess like Alan Yentob's art shows, that sort of thing. It's more like guest of the week, and it's more specifically done. My tagline is arts and lifestyle, which basically means I can tell any sort of story.
Yeah.
Because I don't like to be hemmed in. I like to be able to do anything really,
Yeah. And so when you're
But yeah,
researching a guest, how long would you spend on that? How, because some people, like for instance Mark Maron, he doesn't research his guests hardly at all. He likes to just find out stuff about them as he goes. Other people are kind of meticulous and forensic about their research. David Frost used to do a lot of research
yeah.
for his guests. So where are you on
I
that spectrum?
I'm I do the research. I think for me that's important. I like to have a bit of a safety net when I start the show. I have these sort of loads of A4 pages of scribbled notes, and they're of different points. But I'm also very up for the chat going off on a complete different tangent at all.
Yeah,
You don't
I
want to
think you
make
have
it.
to. Yeah,
You don't
you've
want to be
got to.
anal about it, yeah, and because it makes it more fun, it makes it more interesting, and then you genuinely discover things you had no idea about. Then, I mean, for example, really good example, my most recent guest, Derek Martin, fantastic actor, old school East End Cockney guy. His opening 10 minutes was, I didn't know where this was going at all, because it was basically a story about how he got into acting, but you have to listen to it to believe it, really, because I mean, he almost got sent down for quite a big crime back in the day, and you're hanging on to his every word because I didn't know the outcome. Does he get 5 years or whatever? And I won't blow the ending to you at all, but it inspired him to get into acting. This awful thing that happened to him early in life, and it was just brilliant. And I had no idea about that at all. He completely got me left field there, so that
And
was
how do
fun.
you book the guests? Where do you get them from?
Um, I stalk people.
Uh huh.
No, no. I mean, it's just to say, Lorraine Kelly, you had her on last week. I'm, adore that woman. She's like the Vera Lynn of breakfast TV, isn't she?
Yeah, she's great. Yeah.
But if I get within 30 yards of her, I get an electric shock now, and some alarms go off. So I'm not. I can't go. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. No. But you're looking all serious. No, no, no. So what I do is I think, now who would I like to interview? Uh, and I will either find their website, and then I will see if there's a contact thing where I can message, or there might be an email of an agent. I mean, it's easy enough most of the time to find somebody who you can speak to about it. The problem is, because there are so many podcasts, you really need to let them know that you know what you've got to offer. So I'll
Which
say
is
all the
that you're on
people.
podcast radio for one thing.
I'm on podcast radio. That's a recent thing, though. But I mean, I sort of list all the people I've had already, and obviously, the longer I go on, the bigger the list gets. So that helps as well. So hopefully they don't think they're coming into something that's not. But they haven't got time. But people, I mean, I really reach for the stars when I do the show. I don't necessarily get everybody I want, but if I'm being honest, I've got an awful lot of people that I have wanted, and it's only because I literally just write them a nice letter,
Yeah.
and just say, look, hopefully it'll be a nice time. And then when they come on a show, I mean, now it's virtual all the time. Before COVID,
Yeah.
I would go to wherever it was in the UK, and I've been to Liverpool and Edinburgh and all the rest of it to do all these shows. Um, so hopefully when they've had done the actual show, they would have enjoyed it. It would have been hopefully a little bit better than they anticipated. And I always give them presents at the end.
Oh, do
I
you?
give
What
them
do you
what
give them?
I give them a celebrity goodie bag.
Yes.
Because it's sort of an apology, but I'm not Graham Norton really, or Graham Mack, I must say.
No,
I've
that is a really nice touch. But you give it to them at the end.
Yeah, yeah, at the end they got to work, but these bitches have to work first for it.
See, I would
But
give
no,
it
I
to
don't.
I would give it to them at the beginning and get them in a good mood, or make them think that they owe you something now.
Yeah,
The rules of reciprocity.
yeah, I could do, but no, I tend to sort of spring it on them at the end, and they seem quite chuffed. I mean, this is why the show makes a loss because I don't make any money from advertising or anything. I don't have Patreons or any of that. I'm very old school.
And why is
So
that? Because I know someone who does very, very well out of Patreon.
uh,
They have different levels of supporters on Patreon. We're talking like thousands they make from Patreon.
shall we
And
say that
if you
I'm
get
in
it right,
early?
if you get
Sorry,
it right, it can work, Patreon. Yeah.
I'm having early conversations with a certain Jerry from Podcast Radio. Hello, Jerry. So we're discussing it.
Yeah.
But it's all a bit. I what I really need is a boffin, like a 16-year-old bespectacled, spotty youth who is just a genius because they all
Yeah.
are geniuses, the younger lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to sort my podcast out because I have no idea how many people listen to it. I only base it on my SoundCloud things, and the SoundCloud goes off to Spotify and all the rest of it. But for example, Stephanie Beacham, which I think is quite a big name, and I was a
Yes.
massive fan of, I still am, of all her stuff, and I still think she's very relevant. She's still doing stuff. It's so funny that at work when I tell people about the guests I'm getting, I'm so excited, and they're so sweet at work. They'll say, "Oh, that's great, Nick," and they'll just go, "So who is she again?" And then the other day I was talking about Stephanie Beacham, and I said, "Well, she's been in so many things." And there was this voice behind me saying, "Yeah, but not recently, Nick."
And
They bring me back to down to earth with a fun, but they're lovely with it, so it's fun.
do you have a target listener in mind then when you're putting the thing together, when you're getting the guests, when you're thinking of the questions to ask, and that is there someone in mind that you have that is the target listener for SNS Online?
That's quite a good question. No, I guess people like me. I mean, people possibly of a certain age who would have heard of people who I interview. I
Yeah.
mean, some people. I mean, I had Hank Marvin on the show, and I thought that was an amazing scoop. But
Yes.
most people relate Hank Marvin just to being rather hungry or something,
Right.
which is quite frustrating. But I mean, that show. I don't need to do any advertising with that show. It's always accruing listeners throughout the years because because he is fantastic, and he was a lovely guy as well. So,
He's
but
still
what was your
working.
question again? Oh
The
yeah.
question is, do you have a target listener in mind
Okay.
for the show or for the
I would
podcast?
say I would say people who enjoy popular art shows, who enjoy movies, who enjoy theatre, who enjoy all that. Not necessarily, necessarily particularly highbrow. It can be a real mixture. It tends to be more people you might see on TV or possibly the soaps or Doctor Who or all the big shows that I love. Um, but yeah, and then occasionally I will do something that might be a bit more arty, or might be a musician who is a bit more unusual. There's a friend of mine called Robin Warren who's known as Robin the Fog, and he does all these amazing radiophonic sounds with garden gates and slowing it down and doing all the radiophonic workshop type of stuff, and that's fantastic. But you could argue that's a little bit niche, but there's a hardcore lot of fans for that. So hopefully I'm tapping into different fan groups with these different shows.
Mm-hmm. And you
So, so,
mentioned
I,
red.
so that possibly could be an issue because people aren't necessarily going to go, right, this is going to be about this all the time, because like Doctor Who, each episode can be about anything.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. But yeah, I mean, it allows you to graze a little bit and just go through web. Now we have a website, which is great. You can just literally find out what you'd like.
You are the second massive Doctor Who fan I've had on the program.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the other one was BJ Shea, who does the breakfast show on a radio station in Seattle. And he absolutely, I think that's why he came on. No, I know him quite well, but he was really chuffed to be on the air in the UK because he's such a Doctor Who fan and a bit of an Anglophile. And I asked him for his views on Jodie. What are your views on how Jodie's doing as the Doctor?
Well, I mean, I thought I was always up for a female Doctor. I think Jodie Whittaker is one of the best ambassadors the show's ever had. She seems the nicest person in real life. She's so bubbly, and that comes through on the screen. I think initially I struggled a little bit. It just seemed like it was a bit David Tennant light, and very sort of breathy and lots of sonic screwdriver waving. And I just, but it's interesting in Flux for recent six-parter. There's been some defining Doctor moments, and I've just watched those. She was like, there's a scene when she's being interrogated by this baddie, and it's just brilliant. I mean, and also the dialogue is brilliant, but that's been a bit of an argument about perhaps she hasn't been served with the best quality scripts. I mean, I don't want to get into it too much because I mean, I've loved some of them, but horses for courses. Some people love all that, and some people. I'm hoping for another female Doctor when old Russell T. Harty, as I call him, comes back next year.
Yeah,
I've got my fingers crossed for an actress called Tania Miller, who would be absolutely fantastic. But we shall see. It could be me. Who knows? Could be you.
Who knows? Well, the pressure the NHS is under at the moment, you're lucky to be able to see a doctor at all, male or female. So I think we should all just be thankful.
Absolutely.
I couldn't get an appointment the other week. Yeah. For what it's worth, BJ reckons that Jodie's the best doctor there's been. Now I don't want you haven't met him, but I don't want you to fall out with him before you meet him. So I just thought I'd just say
all doctors are the Doctor for me.
Okay, all right. Meanwhile, back at SNS Online. Yes. Sorry, no, go on. No, please feel free. What were you going to say?
I literally want to pay homage to your wonderful TARDIS that you're in at the moment. I saw the video. TARDIS, it's basically a broom cupboard in your bedroom. I think you moved. Do you know what? Socks and everything. It looks fantastic.
No, it was. Short. It was probably a bit personal, but brief. Just before lockdown. The radio station I worked for in London fired me, and then lockdown came, and all the job interviews and everything I'd got set up all suddenly got cancelled, and I suddenly had to work out how to make a living from home. Yeah. So I took the wardrobe and I put sound treatment in it, and I found I could do audiobooks, and this was just as lockdown started, and since then I've done over 100 of them. I've got 93 audiobooks on sale at Amazon, iTunes, and what's the other one? Audible. In that time, so I needed a studio, and I do obviously podcast radio, and I do another radio station called Great British Radio, and I do bits and pieces here and there. But I did so well at the audiobooks that I could afford to buy a proper custom-made sound booth, which is what this is. It's made by a company in Yorkshire called Cube, K-U-B-E, and they came down and they fitted you design it exactly the right shape and everything that you want, and they came down and fitted it. So if you've probably got access to BBC studios you can sneak into though, haven't you? You don't.
Oh yeah. I mean, I use them. I use them occasionally. I mean, I've got a lash up at home and I do stuff on location, so I use anything that's available basically. But no, I just was very impressed with that video. It was all done in
the video of them building it. Is that the one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you saw them do it. Oh, that's right.
They moved your shirts from one area of the cupboard to another.
All right. So you saw exactly what happened. I moved from the wardrobe over there. I moved into here. Yeah, and it's just been wonderful. Brilliant. It's just it's fantastic. I would recommend if anybody wants to get a setup from home for whatever they want. If they want to do audio from home, voiceover work, or anything like that. Yeah, you got to have a nice microphone, but don't just keep buying more and more expensive microphones. Get a space that sounds good and that can be your space. It's so important, and it works really well.
And just to add,
podcasters too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I heard some of your Audible stuff today, and you're rather good, sir.
What did you hear?
Oh, just a clip of one of your things. Don't ask me which book it
Okay,
was,
because
but I just was curious
there are
to
some
know.
racy ones there, some romance ones where I play the bloke and the girl and end up making out with myself. Um, there's
That's
a couple of
brilliant. I
them.
love it.
There
I
is a
love it.
couple of them. Yeah, and they were
Love
quite interesting to do. Yeah,
it.
I'm
And
doing some nice ones at the moment.
can I
Yeah.
also pay homage to Alan Alda? Oh my God, what a leg end! You
Wasn't
got
he
Alan
lovely
Alda on.
though? He
Oh
was
my God,
lovely. Yeah.
brilliant.
He there was no time limit with him. I mean, we did have a time limit, but he didn't. We went over and he didn't hurry me up. I mean, we went over about 5 or 10 minutes, but he didn't say, "Oh, I've got a much bigger name on the other line" or any of that, which he could have done, and he didn't. He was really, really good, and it's a great podcast,
Yeah.
Clear and Vivid, which is on Podcast Radio, Alan Alda, which was the reason why
Mm.
he was on.
Oh
But
yes,
wasn't he
he is.
just so great, And MASH was at one time my favourite TV show,
Yeah,
and to be
yeah,
able to
cracking.
speak to him, younger me would be like knocked out that I actually got to chat with him, and he was so great as well. He was so
Yeah.
cool and so relaxed, and he didn't play the big star, and
Mm.
that was
No,
good to get.
fantastic.
Who's been your favourite guest?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I mean, getting Armistead Maupin was wonderful because I was a big fan.
Wow.
I'm a big fan of Tales of a City, and I went to his home. This is the thing. Occasionally, I get to stalk people in their homes. Esther Ransom. I've been in her home. I've been going
Yeah.
through her smalls and everything. No, I haven't, but I went to her home. And who else? So Matt Hank Marvin was a great one, and that was in league with ABC Perth, who helped the technical side, which was really, really fantastic.
Or does he
He
live
was
in
supposed to
Perth
be,
now?
yeah, he's got a slight, I don't know, it's a bone thing or something like that. So the sun is good for him. So to
Okay.
play the guitar. So ABC helped me with that, which was fantastic. He was supposed to come to England, that's it. And he was going to be on the One Show and all that carry on, which is directly outside my building. If you ever watch a One Show, just watch anybody in the crowds outside standing. It's always me like this, even after 30 years at the BBC. I think it's like, oh my God, I'm on telly. And I called my partner Andy one night and said, I'm standing by this woman in a sort of pink coat. Can you see me? And he said, oh my God, there you are. You're on TV and you're talking. It's great to still get excited about it, though, isn't it? You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. But there you go. So yeah, I mean, So I got to do Hank Marvin remotely. It would have been in the studio otherwise, but so I also to call out Mike Armstrong, who's a brilliant musician, and Lisa Davis, who have a thing called Lisa Davis Promotions, and they do a lot of. I get a lot of guests from them as well.
Okay.
So I do have a little bit of assistance occasionally. So they get me the more iconic guests like Susie Quattro, people like that, which is really really helpful.
Where
Yeah.
did you interview Susie? Was that pre-lockdown or post-lockdown?
I was locked down, so it was remote. But you know what? I mean, some of the quality you can have with these remote things,
Oh,
audio
it's great.
FaceTime, amazing. I mean, with Derek Martin recently, audio face, no, it wasn't audio face, it was WhatsApp audio, but it sounded fantastic. So and in some ways I'm slightly less nervous because I don't have to meet and greet the person and take them in, sign them in, blah 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 blah. It's just literally call them up and then we're in. So.
Yeah. Yeah. But sometimes it
Mm,
is nice, particularly when people invite you into their home, which always knocks me out. I
yeah.
interviewed Susie Quattro a few years ago in her kitchen in
Okay.
Essex, and
Brilliant.
uh, and the same with Paul Gambaccini invited me to his flat in London. It
Oh,
was like, and you think like, wow, yeah, you don't even know me. I could be like, and
I know.
but they kind of trust you. It's like a mutual respect because
Yeah.
they know they've been there. They've or they've got something to sell, of course, but. In Paul
Well, that's fine.
Gambaccini's case, I think he was still trying to score. I think he still is trying to score some old wounds against the Metropolitan Police because he was treated
Yeah.
dreadfully with that whole thing there. But
I
and
know.
and
I
Susie was
know.
about to go and do a tour, but she was lovely. Yeah,
Mm.
and
No,
but
absolutely.
do you so if given the choice, would you go and see them, or like say COVID was over, and who knows if that will ever happen? Would you rather go and see them face to face, or do you like the convenience of the online version?
I I do, but I think there's nothing better than eyeball to eyeball, and I think that it's more of a personal touch, isn't it? Really. Um, so yeah, I would say I would always because I used to pride myself on always getting guests in person somehow, whereas
Hmm.
so many podcasts around were not doing that, and I was thinking actually that's quite a selling point. But I'm always doing it, with whoever it is. Obviously, it's changed now, but no, it's nice to meet. It's nice to meet your heroes, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I still get when I was lucky enough to do John Cleese in his office in Chelsea, and it was
Oh,
just wonderful, to spend
I,
an hour and a half with John Cleese. I'd pay for that. That's
yeah.
like a competition prize, not just you know what I mean.
You're totally
So
right. This is why
it's
we
just
do
so
it,
cool.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
great. Well,
I
on the
love it, love it.
website, on your website, on the SNS website, is it
Yeah.
SNS Online? What's the full address of the website? Your website?
Oh, just SNS Online Show.
Yes.
Com. Couldn't be easier.
Yeah.
And if you type in SNS Online, the first thing it says on Google is show.
Right.
Results. Bring
Great.
it on.
On there are some interesting photographs, and maybe you could just explain a couple of them. No, well, two of them for me first of all.
Okay.
There's one of you on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise.
Yeah. Well, we
What?
were actually in space. We
Oh,
were in
were you? I
space.
see. Okay, right, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well that
Or
explains that.
we were spaced out, one of the two. I no, it was just down the road from where I'm at now in Beckton. The place so good they named it once is my tagline for Beckton.
Right.
No, it's fine. It's got Asda and everything. It's fine. But anyway, down the road we have the Excel Centre where they do like loads of stuff and conferences and all the rest. And they do Star Trek ones. They do all the cosplay ones and stuff. So we went in 2013 because we're massive Voyager Star Trek fans in particular. But they
Yeah.
had the thing of the bridge, and they take a photo, and they must make a fortune. But you're sitting in the bridge of the Enterprise. It's amazing. So I've got a photo of me and Shatner like this, me and the Shat, and me and Janeway, like this. Everything. It's brilliant. So I don't know. I don't know if that rocks your world or not, but
No, I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I love Star Trek.
yeah,
Yeah.
love it,
I
man.
went to a nice Star Trek exhibition in Seattle once. And
Wow.
they had Kirk's chair there. It was behind a glass screen. I mean, you couldn't sit in it.
Yeah,
It was Kirk's chair. Yeah.
that's
And then
fantastic.
there's
No, I
another
love it.
photograph that you've mocked up. It's kind of like the Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band
Oh yeah,
grave. But I think that the thing on there that interests me the most is, I mean, first of all, are all those photographs, are they of your guests that you've had?
yes,
Right.
all of my guests, but also there's some of family as well. So my parents are in there, and my cat Monkey is there. Andy's there, my partner, he's done like the robot in Sleeper in one point, but he pops up a couple. I think I'm there as Barry Trotter, as I call him, flying through
Right.
the air. And I'm
Yeah.
on the TV as Doctor Who, and I'm also as a Star Trek guy as well. But the great thing is there are so many people in that. It really is like Where's Wally? If you're trying to find somebody, it's quite a fun little pastime if you're really bored. And I also must shout out the brilliant Andy Lambert who did this for me. He's an artist in Brighton, and I kept sending him all these components like that, and he said, "Look, please don't send me any more people because I don't know if I can fit them in. Can you just squeeze Esther Ransom? Can you just squeeze this person in here?" But he did a brilliant job, and I'm so chuffed with that piece of art.
Now,
It was
now
specially commissioned for the 10th anniversary. Yeah.
at the bottom there, where there are Paul McCartney death clues and everything on the original album, it says 2011 to 2018, as if SNS Online has died.
Oh, I see. I didn't think about that. I never thought about that.
Oh, was it taken in 2018? Is that what it was?
It was 10 years of a show. 10 years since.
Oh, it was for the anniversary. Oh,
yes.
Right, I see. But because it is a grave, and it's
got
got
007.
It looked like it's over, but it's not over. It's just the beginning. It was the.
I never even thought. Well, are they supposed to be dead people in the Sergeant Pepper band? I didn't realise that.
No, well, I don't know if Sergeant Pepper is a grave, but the people who believe in the McCartney death clues tell you it's McCartney's grave because there's a left-handed 4-string bass that says PAUL, and there's and things like that.
He was swapped by aliens in 1969, I think. It's true because I have read that.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah, the Paul is dead thing is a fascinating, freaky thing, but it teaches you one thing, which is you can take any information and make it fit. And
totally.
I mean, most of the major religions of the world and also psychics have been using the same principle. So why not? Um,
Absolutely.
it works
It's nice
for
to have a
all.
bit. It's nice to have a bit on the other side occasionally with a happy
Okay.
medium. There you go.
Okay.
Sorry, well, I'm just throwing them. I'm throwing all the jokes out. So anybody from Hollywood, any Hollywood scouts are watching this, they'll think,
Yeah.
right,
Well, Alan Alda's
don't
probably
don't.
watching this with his people right now, and he's probably, hey, get in
He
here,
is.
Nick. Look at this guy, Nick. Get somebody sign Nick. Never mind, you've got
Yeah.
a much bigger name on the other line. Look at Nick here. Um,
Totally. I
yeah,
am going to be on another podcast like this. It's Toby Haydock, who
yeah.
people might know as Fergus. The who? What do you do when you put things on people's cars and it pisses them off? A traffic warden. He's a traffic warden in Corrie. Anyway,
Right.
he's a stand-up comedian, massive Doctor Who fan, blah blah blah. So I've done all these inserts for him about a Doctor Who that I really love, and he has to guess what my favourite moments are. It hasn't come out yet. I did it about a year ago, but I did. I set everything up. I had props. I had Andy standing outside to call something through at a certain point for comedic results and everything. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm hoping, if not Hollywood, Cricklewood might call. We never know.
Yes. Yeah, you just
And this
never
is
know.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you going to drink that whole bottle? I mean, a bottle to
Well,
yourself is quite a lot.
if you're not drinking it, mate, what can I do? You can't put the cork back in, can you?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Once you
But
pop, you cannot stop. Yeah.
I do have to do this as well. We have to acknowledge Christmas, so.
Okay.
But
Okay. Yeah.
is there any other? I'm trying to think of any other thing that any other angle on my show I can tell you about. I mean, it's going to
what I'm
continue.
trying to do, we're trying to get a broad view of you, Nick, and the show, and what makes you tick, and we're trying to get people to listen to the podcast, which they can do on Podcast Radio, of course, or they can download it from wherever you get your podcast, and you can pick and choose and listen to it on demand, which is fun, and I can recommend it because it is a really, really nice podcast, and your personality comes shining out of it as well as your guests.
Shut up.
It's true, but
Keep talking.
what podcasts inspire you?
You see, I was afraid you were going to ask me that because I'm a bit flaky on other people's. It's all about my
Really?
one.
If you're not on it, it's not worth listening to.
Well, no, it's not that. I actually, to be honest, I don't actually have that much time. Also, I don't actually listen to the radio that much. This is an awful thing to say for somebody who's worked in radio for 30 years. But I am a telly addict. I'm a telly addict, and I love it. And I think I'll just listen again.
Hang
Are
on,
you
Nick.
there?
You've
Oh,
gone a
right,
bit
right,
funny.
right.
Are we back? Are we back? I think.
I froze when I went like.
Yeah. Up. Now you've gone again. Where's Nick gone this time? Every now and again, he just disappears. Oh, and I think we're about to get. Oh, no, there he is, and we gotta get rid of that.
I'm back again.
Look
Can
at
you hear
that.
me?
Yes, I can hear you beautifully now. Everything's good.
This is hard work, Graham. I think I should get extra sweets for this. All this toing and fro.
Yeah, what happens if who have you got your internet with?
Am I allowed to say? Other broadband providers are available.
Well, I don't think this is, considering you keep clicking off. It's not much of a commercial for them. So.
Well, the only clue I would say is look up.
Sky. Are you with Sky? Well, I thought they were okay. I think I'm with BT, but I thought they were okay. I don't know why this has gone funny.
No idea.
Yeah. So what do you want? Sorry, no, you're the guest.
No, because
you speak.
In the pre warm up, and I've been practicing all day with this thing.
Yes.
I was looking in a certain direction, so it looks like I'm looking at the camera. But if I look at you, I think my eye line is wrong. So I thought it was here, but I think I might have had my phone turned upside down. So is it there? Am I looking at you now, sir?
No.
Am I looking at you now, sir?
Yes, you are.
So I was right. I was right after all.
Yeah,
Brilliant,
no,
brilliant.
I would have said, Nick, you're a bit gauzy-eyed. Don't worry, I would have put you straight.
Okay.
So SNS Online.
That might be difficult.
Oh,
anyway,
of course. I didn't mean it like that, obviously. Yeah. So where do you want to take this SNS Online? Because you've had the big A-list guests, you've had the fun, you've had the, as you described, the strokey beard interviews. You've had all that going on. There's plenty of light and shade in it, and there's plenty of you comes across as well. Where do you want this to go?
you see, I guess by 8 years of a show, I had hoped that things might have evolved a little more by now. And don't get me wrong, podcast radio is a massive, massive development, and I'm very excited about that. Um, but yeah, I mean, and as I keep saying, SoundCloud, I checked like for example, Stephanie Beacham. Oh my God, how many people would listen to that? I would think a fair few.
Yeah.
But on SoundCloud, it literally just says about, I don't know, 230 listens. Now, I find that really strange because it goes out to Spotify and all the rest of it. So I'm wondering if what I'm reading on SoundCloud is not the full ticket.
I don't know.
No.
The thing with podcasts, the people who've done it successfully, not when I say successfully, SNS Online is a successful podcast.
I know.
No, but people who I know who've taken it to the stage where they're making money from it, or it's all they do. This is how they earn their living, and there are people I've spoken to that do that with it, and they all seem to have a couple of things in common. They are absolutely all over social media. Or they have a pre-existing tribe that they tap into.
Yeah. I try to tap into pre-existing tribes for each show, like found Stephanie Beacham, and for each show, I will go to all the social media that will feature her, like Dynasty sites and all the rest of it. Put the show there. I will, like all those pages and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, where do I want to take it is your question. I just want to keep going. I want to get better. I want to aim for better guests. And I want to see if just something on another level evolves from it. I'm not quite sure what. I mean, I don't think at my age I'm going to suddenly be doing this on BBC One or anything like that. And that's fine.
Why not?
Well, I don't know. I think it's unlikely, put it this way, because I'm a certain age now. So I would say it's more that I just would like more people to listen, more people to enjoy it. And I think the content is good. I think it's, like if I'm going to sell this now, I think I generally produce good content.
You do.
With really good guests. And I'm a professional sound guy, so I hopefully know what I'm doing with the mixing and all the rest of it and trying to make it as tight as possible. And it's a good variety of things. I mean, I remember Alan Yentob was on a few years ago, and he was talking about his show Imagine, and he has like big shows like Bette Midler and Woody Allen, which are fantastic shows where he meets them and chills with them. But he also does these more highbrow art ones. But it was actually his words talking about, he allows people to graze by having some of the good ones, and then they might be introduced to other stuff. So I have tried to bring out, I mean, I've had poets on, and I've had people who do quite unusual music and all the rest of it. It's not just really obvious. It's a real mixture, I mean, I had Johnny Benjamin on, who's a mental health ambassador, and that was a really important show, and he was a lovely guy. And there's been a lot of those sort of shows as well. So I enjoy them all. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy exploring different subjects and learning. I learn a lot from these shows as well. And I'm more of a reader now than I used to be, because I used to just put the telly equivalent on. Whereas now, if I'm going to be talking to somebody about a book, I will want to read that book first. I want to be totally absorbed in their world before I speak to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long answer, and I haven't really answered your question. I don't know where it's going to go.
It's hard to know. It's hard to know where podcasting is going, because it is still very, very new. It's the latest incarnation of broadcasting. Where do you think podcasting is going?
I think it's really, really healthy that anybody can do a podcast, because anybody can be watching the TV or listening to radio and think, well, I can do that. Whereas in my day, when I was a little kid, I would do little cassettes for if my sister in Hong Kong or whatever, and I'll do I say funny sketches. I thought they were good at the time, and would introduce a piece of music and a little clip from a TV program, and I would sort of do scratch and sniff for my friends and family. But literally, it would only be them or possibly a few people who might listen to them at all. But so, I've forgotten what question I got.
Where do you think podcasting is going?
Oh, possibly more regulation. It's sort of regulated in some way, so it becomes more structured.
Do you know what? I don't know about that, because I think, one of the great things about podcasting is it's not regulated. And I know
I
Ofcom want
know.
to get their hands on it, but I think Ofcom just want to justify their existence because they're becoming so irrelevant. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, they're trying to make out that the public needs to be protected from the public, and I'm not so sure. Everybody knows that it's not regulated, and there are over 18s podcasts, and they make it pretty specific that they are for mature audiences. I don't think anyone is trying to get stuff past people. So I don't know about. I hope there's not more regulation. I mean, because we've already got laws about defamation and all the rest of it that podcasting is no different. But all these other silly Ofcom rules, that I think, when I first I started out in the radio in Australia, which was a lot more easygoing, shall we say. Yeah, that's where I started. My first commercial radio station was 2PK Parks in the central west of New South Wales, and then I went to 5C Mount Gambier, did the breakfast show, and ended up doing the nighttime show at 2GO just north of Sydney on the Central Coast. So I started my first 3.5 years in radio were in Australia, and I came back to Britain in '97, and back then it was the Radio Authority, the precursor to Ofcom. And their rules were so bizarre that you could be fined for not playing enough 80s music, or you had 30 seconds not enough news, or whatever it was. And I actually believed that the only point of the British regulator was to protect the BBC, to stop commercial radio being any good. Because I thought, you've got a commercial radio station. This is a business. If they put stuff on the air that people don't listen to or don't like, they're not going to get the advertising, and they're going to go out of business. They don't need you to come up with a different set of rules to make you put stuff on the radio that, to make you do news when you're a music station. You don't necessarily need to do any news, but they all had to do it. You had to have in '97, you had to have a board, and there had to be a lord on the board. At 2CRFM in Bournemouth, we had Lord Stokes, the bloke who, crashed British Leyland. He was now on the board of a radio station. What the hell would he know about broadcasting? He didn't know that much about the car industry. I mean, so the whole British thing for me always seemed bizarre. It's less bizarre now, but it's still not right. And Ofcom are still an awful organisation. I mean, they turn a blind eye when Hart wants to network that bloody awful breakfast show that only half as many people are listening to as were listening to all the local breakfast shows that it replaced, although it's cheaper. They turn a blind eye to all that. There's no regulation there, although there was regulation, but they just turn a blind eye to that. And all they keep doing is beating up community radio stations and threatening to fine them and take their licenses away because they haven't put a financial report in during the COVID thing, or one person complained. Why do they even bother, right, if one person complains about something? And I mean, if 100 people complain about something you did on the radio, okay, let's have a look at it. One person? Come on. You should just throw that out. There should be like a limit that you need. I mean, and have you ever complained to a regulator about something that was broadcast? Have you ever done that?
Once.
Really?
Oh, but listen, and I will explain. And it was
okay.
I think it was probably an internal email. It was something horrible that happened on the news, and because I had the sound down, and I was actually doing some mixing, but it was just on, and I just saw
on the TV.
It was a wedding party, and suddenly at one point the whole floor caved in, and all these people.
I remember that.
Some died.
Yeah.
And I'm not very good with stuff like that, and
fair enough.
For it.
Right.
And I just thought, for flip's sake, I would have liked to have been prepared for that. I think I must have had the sound on because I wouldn't have, because I don't think it was. It was
I get
before
you.
It came on. So I just wrote. I don't know who I wrote to, and it wasn't like, so and so from Stockton-on-Tees was appalled. I just said, look, come on, guys. You need to prepare us for stuff like this. There are little braddies watching out there who might be upset. That's it, but that's literally any. There's other times I've moaned and shouted at the TV or the radio and thrown rotten tomatoes at it. But I mean, I wouldn't. No, who would? I mean, the problem is people on Twitter and all that. We're now of a generation where there's all these keyboard warriors who just want to have a pop because they're bored, and it makes their lives more interesting to see the impact of their nastiness, um, people being affected by it. And I think
Yeah.
we could talk about that all night. But no, I mean, of course, you've got so many salient points about all that. I mean, I wouldn't be looking for any regulation or anything like that. Possibly the only thing I could think of is possibly some sort of reward system, not financial, but it could lead to financial things. So, like the blue ticks you used to get on Twitter when it was like a
Yeah.
verified thing
Yeah.
of you're in broadcasting or something, some verified, if there was some sort of acknowledgement from the show, regardless of how many listens they got. So I might have a go at that. But just so that just would be something, a reward system. And I'm not
Yeah.
just talking about the British Podcast Awards, which is a great vehicle.
It is.
I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
I searched for years to find out there's got to be some podcast awards in the world. I kept Googling, couldn't find anything. Eventually found this. I mean, I've entered it every year because I think you've got to be in it to win it, and I've never got anywhere. And the problem with it is you don't know if you were like I think there's 6 people in the shortlist. You don't know if you're number 7 or number 77 or 1,077. So you never really have any idea. And of course, they haven't got the finances to give you that information. I get it, but I just think there should be a, a reward system to help and encourage people more, and also to help them improve, to get the content better. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a few guys around a microphone in their bedroom banging on about last night's TV, or they're doing a show about Buffy or whatever. I mean, that's great if you want to listen to it, and probably they will get far more listeners than I do for the show with Armistead Morphin. Whatever, good luck to them. But I think they're just it will help consumers possibly have a better idea about, oh yeah, they're having a bit of fun. We can have a listen to it, or oh yeah, this is like they do this and that and the other. Am I making any sense? I mean, I'm really
Yeah,
not quite sure
I
how
think
to
it gets
answer your
back
question.
to it gets back to discovery, doesn't it? I mean, there may be, because there are so many niches and there's so many great podcasts and there's so many great guests on podcasts like yours on SNS Online, and people, say someone who is massive fan of Mr. Morpin's work doesn't know they're on your show until they accidentally catch your show on podcast radio, or catch this thing on YouTube or
Yeah.
whatever it is, and then all of a sudden they go back and listen to it from 3 years ago, or whatever
Mm,
the thing is. If only they
mm,
knew then. And I think podcast radio does a great job to help with discovery. There just needs to be some other way of discovering great podcasts, and I don't
I
know what
think
that would
that,
be.
yeah, one good thing about my show, which I will sort of throw in, is the fact that a lot of them are quite timeless. And
Yes.
so I will interview say Armstead Morpin. I can't remember when I interviewed him now, a couple of years ago, and he was just about to work on the brand new Tales of a City. Well, it's actually set in the 80s. So,
Yeah.
and I don't think that book's come out yet. So as far as I'm concerned, in terms of where he's at now,
Yes.
that's still reasonably summing up his life to date, really. So a lot of these don't really age, and quite often I get guests who might be older. I find that guests who are in the apex of their careers, all the Meryl Streeps and all that lot, they're probably too busy to do a podcast, particularly one like mine that might not have the reach that they want. And they also get interviewed all the time. So as much as it'd be great to speak to someone like Meryl Streep, it does. I'm not really worried about it. And so I quite often find I get people, for example, Derek Martin. He's in his 80s, but what a life to talk about all that amazing stuff. So I sometimes get sort of criticized. Oh yeah, well he either interviews clapped out music stars from the 80s or clapped out Doctor Who assistants from the 60s and stuff. And I think I thought you're missing a point that there's a rich life there to be listened to, and yeah, there we go.
It's an interesting point with podcasts that radio, except radio shows that become podcasts, that radio doesn't really have, and that is that long tail factor. That
Mm,
people can discover something great in a podcast that's from years ago and it's just as relevant, or something may happen in the news and it suddenly becomes more relevant.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I'd love to. It'd be interesting to hear what. Have I got the word right? People who talk about
Epidural?
No, Not even close. People who talk about epidemics. What is it? Epidemiologists? Is that it? Yeah. But people who talk so maybe an interview with an epidemiologist from 4 years ago who predicted COVID would be, and that interview is probably out there on a podcast somewhere, if only we could find it. So maybe that's a key to successful podcasting, is to make it timeless. And I realize this as I'm talking to a bloke who is dressed up with a Santa hat on in front of a Christmas tree, making this not exactly generic, because I think wasn't it like, Didn't Morecambe and Wise used to get really fussy? Like the Morecambe and Wise Christmas show, when it was the big show every Christmas Day, didn't they make sure, go out of their way, that there was nothing Christmassy, not even a hint of tinsel on the show, just because they knew if it wasn't, although it was the Morecambe and Wise Christmas show, there was nothing on it that was Christmassy, deliberately, so that the BBC could rerun it in the summer and they could get a repeat fee. I mean,
I've never noticed. I've never noticed that, but because I watch it every year. I love Morecambe and Wise, so I'm very interested to see if that's true. I'm sure there's a nod to Christmas. They must at least say, "Welcome to Morecambe and Wise."
I mean, it's the I mean, the credits say Morecambe and Wise Christmas show, and I think there may even be some holly or something in the graphics. But I think the show itself, the sketches themselves, could have come from any of their shows. Although you can see there's a bit more work and a bit more money gone into those ones than the others. Yeah.
Bear in mind, in the 70s, we had 3-day weeks. We only had 3 channels, and they had American imports that would go out at 8 o'clock at night on BBC One. They'd never do that now. So I remember seeing the most inappropriate Christmas shows being repeated in August, and Maisie from Stockton-on-Tees would write in and say, "Oh, all these bloody repeats, it's disgusting,"
Yeah.
We now have repeat channels where it's allowed,
It's all repeats, yes. Yeah. But I think one of the funniest for me, getting back to Alan Alda, is MASH. MASH lasted for 11 years on TV, but the Korean War only lasted for 3 years. And I think they have a Christmas episode every year, every season in MASH, when there weren't that many Christmases in the Korean War. There are like 11 Christmases in MASH, and there are only 3 in the actual.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Wow. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they were all part of the same Christmas. They were happening.
I don't know, because the cast would change. Like you'd have a different colonel, and BJ was it McIntyre was replaced by BJ about halfway through, and there's different people. It must be the same. If it's the same Christmas, it's like Christmas 1956 or something. 11 times, but with different people.
Very wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, as the good doctor would say. I would say.
Yeah, but I suppose if you're the number one sitcom in the world, you can do whatever the hell you like. Which Alan Alda did mention, didn't he? He said that the censorship only became a problem. Was it? Did he say only became? Yeah, it only became a problem when they were successful. When they were. Or was it the other way around? I forget what he said about it. He said that they could get away with a lot more when they were successful. That's right. And he's like, yeah, but more people are watching it now. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's like the reruns of Star Trek. I mean, somebody in the world will always be watching Star Trek at some point. I think for a while, MASH was on that level as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Seinfeld is probably close to that now, or maybe Friends or something. Yeah.
Oh, I think Friends, God.
I think the most disturbing thing about Star Trek is in Star Trek: The Next Generation, we discover that 200 years into the future, still no cure for baldness.
Yeah, but there's no overweight people in the future.
Oh yes, that's right. Aren't there any aliens that are maybe a bit chunky?
Possibly, but the only overweight people you see in Starfleet are in the fan films. I shouldn't be saying this. This is horrible. I'm not being horrible. It's just true. You get this this is supposed to be the captain. The chair's like 3. No, this is fattest, isn't it? This is fattest, and I'm on a diet and everything. I'm sorry, dear readers. I didn't mean it.
All right.
Don't hate me. Don't hate me on Twitter, please.
So what's next for you, Nick Randell?
Well, I'll probably have some food, and I'll whack on the telly. if you're talking more sort of, longer term, I'm working over Christmas, but that's fine because the shifts seem to be quite fluffy and easy. I get a cab on Christmas Day, which is brilliant, and
Nice.
get to see my mates at work and turkey in the canteen out of a little plastic thing. I don't feel sorry for it. It's fine. It's fine. I haven't worked Christmas for years, and I've managed to wriggle out of it because I'm such a baby and I love my Christmas. But I've got to tick it off at some point, so that's fine. And then the new year, back to work again. I'm looking for a development in the job role, which has a different job title, so I might be doing that in the future. I also write as well. I've been writing scripts for quite a few years. Nothing has happened yet, but I have a big project that I've been meaning to start for so long, and I keep writing, adding to my notes on my phone. It's based on something from my past, so I want to give myself the proper time to write that as well, and just to see
Can
if
you give
anything
us a
happens with
clue
it.
what that's about, or are you scared of someone
Yeah, I
nicking the
mean,
idea?
well, I basically, when I was a young LGBTQ chap in London, I thought I should join a self-defense course for just protecting myself. I come out of nightclubs and stuff because it was all a very dodgy time in the late
Yeah,
80s. You had the
yeah.
HIV and a lot of the homophobia, which still exists and the rest of it. But so I went to my first ever gay pride thing, or I call Whoopsie Pride, and I got this leaflet that said "Survive the Street." So I went to that, and it was a sort of a coming of age for me because I met loads of fellow gay people and we were meeting for a purpose. It wasn't like some awkward like gay social, like oh, just so and so fancy so and so. Awful. It was we were there for a common cause, and so it was a real laugh. And I remember we were once and then it then evolved into jujitsu, and I went up to purple belt, which is two below black. So don't mess with me in a dark alley, mate.
Okay.
But I've forgotten it all. I don't have no idea. If you came with me at a knife, if you went one way, I could block it and flip you around. If you came the other side, I would have to ask you to put your knife in the other hand before you attack me. I don't really think that would scan in real life somehow. And occasionally we would be working with a straight club, so there'd be the gays and the straights in the same club. And I remember one time a friend of mine who was could be quite flamboyant at times. He got kicked in the stomach and he just shrieked and said, "Oh, I've lost a baby!" And you could have heard a pin drop. And there was there was just so much material there. And I thought I want to write something about those days. And we had people we lost from AIDS, and it was a coming of age. I mean, I met my first long-term partner there. I was with for 6 years. Who's still a really good friend, and because British films, the best British films for me are sort of underdog films when they're trying to better themselves somehow, and there's a lot of uh, pressure the other way from various people and all the rest of it. I mean, because we entered competitions, and I think there was a little bit of homophobia from some of the straight clubs thinking, "Oh, well, who we got here then?" And I think we won one, and it was like quite a seminal, important moment for us, and there was final respect after that. So it
So what
makes me
was the
think of films like
competition? That
Pride.
was it was a jujitsu competition
Yeah. I mean, you have these little
tournament thing.
yeah, stuff like that. Yeah. So I've probably I've told you about the whole plot now.
Have you got a name for it? No, not like fighting for survival or something like that, or I don't know, fighting for the truth,
Right.
or I don't know.
Well, that's pretty good. I'll have that. I'll give you a fiver for that.
The fight
But
of your life,
anyway,
isn't that? Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, it's because it's my story and friends of mine's story. I think it. I should try to write it. It doesn't
You're supposed
necessarily
to
mean I'm
write
the
what you
best.
know, aren't you? So
Yeah,
yeah,
and I'm not necessarily the best person to do it, but I'm going to give it a shot. So there we go.
yeah. Oh
We
well,
shall
that
see.
sounds really interesting. And what about
But it's
SNS
very funny.
Online? You got any good guests coming up that you can give us a sneak on?
Do you know what? I haven't got any to tell you about at all. The series is finished. No, I mean sometimes it's a bit of a surprise for me. I mean, there's loads of people I still want to get on, um, but I'm sort of at this sort of period when I'm sort of finally sort of chilling out from the whole experience, and I just want to have a nice Christmas. So I've literally just rounded off the series, with no real thoughts. This happens sometimes. I'm slightly nervous about not having no inspiration, but I know it will come again, because it always does.
Yeah.
So who knows? I'm as excited as you are about it, 'cause I have no idea what's going to happen. But hopefully, there's a few high-profile people I'll manage to grab. We shall
I
see.
hope so. I hope so, because you do such a nice job with it. It does. You can tell you've done the research, but it never moves away from sounding like a real conversation. And it sounds like you ask them questions that you just want to know the answer to, and hope that other people want to find out about that. And you do, when somebody goes off on a certain, you do follow the ball, and away you go. And it is a really, really nice podcast. It's called SNS
Bless
Online.
you.
No, I like it. I do like it, Nick. It's very good. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it is. It is really, really good. And you can check it out. The website's nice as well. It's called SNS. If you just put SNS Online in Google, it does fill in the rest for you, and it'll take you right there. Yeah,
SNS and of course, Online show.
Yeah, SNS Online. It will then write in the word show.
Not SNS Online sneakers, which you can also buy.
Oh, that's right. There is. There is. When I was looking for you on Twitter, I quickly found the sneakers one. Yeah.
I'm actually thinking of marketing some SNS Online sneakers.
Yes.
That I can sell on. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you could just get theirs and say they're merch.
I do have merch. I'm building up to merch. I have a mug.
Yes.
With my mug on it, and other people's mugs from we did it was a group thing for the 10th anniversary. So yeah, I'm considering stuff like that. Is anybody going to buy them? I don't know. I would.
Yeah. Well, you should download the podcast, because that's free. You get it from iTunes. You get it from wherever you get your podcasts. You get it from Google Podcasts. You get it everywhere. It's called SNS Online. Nick Randell, thanks to you and the team that put the podcast together. Yes.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been great having you on, and please do stay in touch, because I like the Pod 20 to be like the podcaster's best friend, because it is all about discovery is the big challenge with podcasts, and I hope we can do our bit on podcast radio, and particularly with the Pod 20. And if you've got a big guest coming up one week or whatever, just send me an email and I'll mention it. Yeah, sure, because a lot of the podcasters who have had on the show have given me updates, and if there's somebody big on or something interesting happening on the thing, I can just chuck in a little mention for that or whatever. So please stay in touch, and you can listen to SNS Online. You can listen to it on podcast radio. When is it on? At what time? Do you know when your slot is? Because they repeat them at different times, don't they? Do you know? Or have I put you on the spot?
Well, because I sent them a shed load of new shows to put out. Yeah. And I think, bless them, they are just so busy. They don't always have a chance to get that. And I get it. It's a lovely cottage industry vibe.
It really is.
Which I love.
Yeah.
So I have absolutely no idea when it goes out.
Okay.
But apparently it does.
If you check out thepodcastradio.co.uk, which is something I should have checked out before we even did this, because it'll be in the schedule.
Do your research.
Yes, I should do that. I should do that. It's just pretty slack. But Nick Randell, great to talk to you. I hope you've enjoyed our chat. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And all the best with SNS Online. It's a fabulous podcast. Great guests. And hey, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, generic Easter, August, whatever. Just blur the mouth out. Yeah.